If you're playing modern video games, chances are that the game you are playing was built on Epic Games' Unreal Engine. Fighting games, role-playing games, adventure games, remasters, indie titles. The Unreal Engine helped developers big and small produce a game unrestricted by genre, named after the first product of the engine, 1998's first-person shooter, Unreal. But to trace the roots of the Unreal Engine, we must go back to the roots of Epic Games, when it was originally known as Potomac Computer Systems. Founded by Tim Sweeney, Potomac Computer Systems was known for its shareware titles, beginning with ZZT. ZZT was a text-based game that provided several different games within the title, as well as its own script and game editor. Sweeney was still an engineering student at the time who would work on his computer at his parents' house. ZZT was designed as a simpler alternative to the Turbo Pascal system. When Sweeney realized that he would be one credit short of graduating from the University of Maryland, Sweeney decided to commit to selling shareware games on a full-time basis after observing the success of id Software's Commander Keen. Sweeney would later program his first 2D side-scrolling game, Chill of the Jungle. He later changed Potomac Computer Systems to Epic MegaGames as a way of trying to appear as a legitimate competitor to Apogee Software Productions, publisher of Commander Keen and Wolfenstein 3D, the biggest shareware titles at the time. Despite the grand-sounding title, Sweeney was the only programmer for the company. To help his shareware business grow, Sweeney recruited Mark Rain, a fellow business entrepreneur who had worked with id Software on publishing Commander Keen, Wolfenstein 3D, and Wolfenstein 3D Spear of Destiny, until he was let go. Rain helped Epic MegaGames grow with his entrepreneurship skills while working remotely in Toronto. Soon, more employees would join the company, including Cliff Bleszinski. Bleszinski, who would achieve fame for himself in Epic Games with his Gears of War franchise, got his start by submitting his own personally developed game, Palace of Deceit, and submitting it to Sweeney. Impressed, Sweeney recruited Bleszinski, and he produced Epic MegaGames' next big shareware title, Jazz Jackrabbit, which was successful enough to warrant its own sequel. Then came work on what would become Epic MegaGames' most ambitious title to date, Unreal. The first-person shooter market had already been thriving by the near end of the 90s, with titles like id Software's Quake, which pushed the envelope for how well-produced the first-person genre could be, and with Rare's GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64, the first-person shooter genre became more popular and more accessible. With how much the first-person shooter genre was thriving, there were plans to make Unreal stand out in ways that hadn't been achieved previously in the genre.
Prisoners 849 escaping.
While other first-person shooter games were predominantly set in one locale, Unreal had multiple settings within its story. There was more interaction with the environments of the settings than what had been previously encouraged. You weren't just looking for weapons, keys, or exits. You were looking for anything that could help you figure out your surroundings, and to further expand on the lore of the inhabitants of the planet Na Pali and their unfortunate fates. The game was composed by Alexander Brandon, Michael van den Bos, Andrew Sega, and Dan Gardope, all composers with experience working for Epic MegaGames before contributing to Unreal. The format used for the game's score was the module music format, commonly referred to as MOD music. This format of music originated from Amiga computers, and with assistance from a tracker, helped produce high-quality music using pulse code modulation sound samples. This format of composing music was used in previous Epic titles like Jazz Jackrabbit and One Must Fall 2097. Unreal would be released in May 1998 for the PC and the Mac OS in November 1998. Console ports for the Nintendo 64 disk drive and the Sega Dreamcast were considered, but ultimately, plans fell through due to the financial hardships of publisher GT Interactive. The game was successful enough to make the single Unreal game into a franchise, with the next game in the series being Unreal Tournaments. Unreal Tournament would pave the way for Epic Mega Games, which simply became Epic in 1999, to dominate the multiplayer shooter market. Epic would follow Unreal Tournament's lead with the 2006 release of Gears of War, and once again in 2017 with the first season of Fortnite Battle Royale. And it all started with the Unreal Engine, a development kit that Tim Sweeney claims started from ZZT being a conceptual blueprint for Unreal, a game engine with a high productivity, what you see is what you get tools pipeline, bundled with a programming language aimed at simplifying gameplay logic. Another unique feature of the Unreal Engine at the time was real-time level editing. Sweeney is quoted as saying, "The major initial challenge was the Unreal Editor's support for real-time geometry editing, including performing constructive solid geometry operations in real time. I was new to 3D programming and found the problem mind-boggling. But there was one 24-hour stretch of programming where I got all of the cases right and CSG went from not working at all to working perfectly." To keep up with the shift to more dedicated graphics cards at the turn of the century, Unreal Engine was given a 2.0 update, one that would make it easier to not only support PCs, but to also start supporting home consoles. Unreal Engine 2 would also mark the beginning of the dev kit being licensed to other companies, like the US Army to develop America's Army, a game developed with the intent to educate young people about the military and to potentially encourage them to join the army. Ubisoft for the Splinter Cell games, Ion Storm for Deus Ex Invisible War, 2K Games for BioShock, Bethesda for Dishonored, and so many more games from so many different companies. With each new version of the Unreal Engine, more studios and more genres would use the tools to help craft their games. Unreal Engine has also branched out into the film and television industry, with television shows like HBO's Westworld and Disney's The Mandalorian using the Unreal Engine to develop computer-generated environments in a virtual studio, while also being able to produce the proper lighting for visual effects teams to easily integrate the CG geometry. The 1998 release of Epic's Unreal accomplished three things. It innovated how first-person shooters could look and how they could be played. It began Epic's assertion as a trendsetter for multiplayer shooters and how much replay value could go into them. And it introduced the world to the Unreal Engine. Named after a game released in 1998, has since gone on to become one of the most widely used engines for the development of a wide variety of video games, film, and television.
From the shores of Maine to the California coast, Tomba has captured the hearts of Americans everywhere. Maybe it's the way he swings and climbs, or defeats the evil pigs and man-eating plants. Or maybe it's the way you and Tomba conquer them all. Together, Tomba loves you. And by golly, America loves Tomba. PlayStation.
Soukaigi, composed by Hiroki Kikuta. Ukes, widely known and still known today for their wrestling games, jumped into the role-playing game genre with this Japan-only release. Hiroki Kikuta, who was one of Square's biggest composers thanks to the Seiken Densetsu games, was brought on to compose this game. And unlike a lot of games released on the PlayStation at the time, the entire soundtrack was composed using live instruments. Of course, this meant that the soundtrack would be a lot smaller than his previous works. But this was all by choice, as Kikuta did not want to have to modify sound drivers like he had to on the Super Nintendo. It was easier to just produce the music and record it as is. Kikuta was very experimental with his music. For example, Quake, a piece that incorporates Japanese vocalists chanting in Malaysian, while the music itself was given greater emphasis over the lyrics, with its heavy percussion normally heard in a rock song, strings and pianos normally heard in chamber music, on top of a chanting style inspired by Buddhism. Kikuta already meshed different styles of music together in previous works, but the opportunity to use live music helped Kikuta develop, enhance, and improve upon his own talents. And like Yasunori Mitsuda and Yoko Shimura, Kikuta for the first time used a vocalist for one of his pieces. The ending theme, Lovely Strains, was performed by pop star Kotomi Kiyono, who also served as the voice actress of main protagonist Mizuho Mikanagi. Unfortunately, while the soundtrack received very favorable praise, the rest of the game was nowhere near as memorable. Soukaigi's critical failure partly resulted in Kikuta leaving Square to form his own game company, Saknoff, so that he would have more freedom over the games he would work on. His first game, Kudelka, was released in December of 1999 and would serve as the introduction to the Shadow Hearts franchise. Soukaigi may not come close to matching the legacy he created with the Seiken Densetsu games, but Soukaigi did manage to show what Kikuta was capable of doing without any limitations to music quality.
Radiation level 85. Critical. The future is forsaken. The future is forsaken. The future is forsaken. The future is forsaken.
The crushing pound of the mallet. The shattering blow of the club. The slashing edge of the blade. They call to you. Mortal Kombat 4. Darkness is calling.
Hey, come on! Stand up! Face it straight!
Bomberman Hero on N64.
It's a new Bomberman.